Good morning. We awake? Yeah. Good. So, how are your feet doing? We spend a lot of time on our feet, but we usually don't give them much thought until something goes wrong. The past couple of months, I've had plantar fasciitis in my left foot. So I've been limping around a bit, doing my exercises, getting the heel insoles in, podiatrist appointment coming up next week, and basically paying a lot more attention to my feet than normal. But let's leave our feet planted where they are for now. We'll come back to them a bit later. First this morning, we're going to look at some key questions that the Apostle Paul asked the young church in Rome that are as important to us today as they were when he first asked them. So let's read Romans 10, 13 to 15. Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. How then can they call on the one they have not believed in? And how can they believe in the one of whom they have not heard? And how can they hear without someone preaching to them? And how can anyone preach unless they are sent? The young church in Rome, like most of the early churches, was made up of both Jews and non-Jews. And there's a debate going on about whether or not the non-Jews needed to follow the various Jewish laws and traditions. In this part of his letter, Paul is helping them understand that this newly found faith or newly expressed faith was open to all, not just to Jews, and not dependent on following different traditions and rules. So when Paul says that everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved, his emphasis is on the word everyone. Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. This great news of forgiveness of sin through the death of the Messiah and the right to be considered a child of God was open to everyone. And actually, this is the heart of our being. It's our reason for existence. Being able to call on the name of the Lord and be saved by Him. Saved through the forgiveness of our sins, saved by being brought into that living, vibrant relationship with the God of the universe, saved by being restored back to that walking, talking connection with God that we were created for, back to that relationship we're at before we, as humans, got too proud and thought we could handle it all ourselves. Effectively, saved by realizing we have messed up, saying sorry to God for our self-centeredness, asking Him to clean us up, clean up our lives, and letting Him drive the car with us in the back seat. Because His GPS works a lot better than ours in navigating this life we're in. But getting to that point doesn't happen automatically. We don't inherit our relationship with God from our parents, from our culture, or earn it through our actions. We enter into this relationship with God through belief in Jesus, which leads us to the set of questions that Paul asks. How then can they call on the name of the one they have not believed in? You can't call on the name of the Lord if you haven't believed in Him. And because Paul links calling on the name of the Lord with Him saving us, without having taken the step to believe in Him, then that forgiven relational connection with God can't be a reality in our lives. Becoming a follower of Jesus isn't about living out kingdom values in the world around us. It's about believing in Him, recognizing that He took the penalty for all we've done to insult Him and others by our actions and words, and stepping into that recreated relationship that we talked about earlier. It's only then that we can call on His name, to count Him as a friend who we know by name, as well as being a Savior. So the first step in this process, Paul says, is believing in Him. That's where it gets tricky, as Paul sets out in his next question. How then can they believe in the one of whom they have not heard? See, we live in such a privileged position in this Bangor area. where around 40 churches are meeting this morning, where God's word is read in one way or another and the gospel explained. But picking the church you like, the one that best meets your needs, is not at all the privilege for most of the world. The mission community talks about unreached people groups, where there's so few followers of Jesus in a group centered around a language or a culture or a history that there's no realistic possibility of a person ever hearing the gospel. There might be a few Christians in the people group, but they lack the manpower and resources needed to see the gospel spread through their entire community. The part of North Africa that Russell and Roberta live in is a classic example of that. There are Christians living there. Next one, Amy. Thank you. There are Christians living there, some from the local community, and some who have come from other countries, like from us here in Kings. But there are so few that the tipping point needed for the gospel to be accessible and available to everyone in the community is nowhere near being reached. Of the 8 billion people in the world today, 3.2 billion, that's 40%, are considered unreached or least reached. 4 out of 10 have no possibility of hearing the gospel. They tend to live in that band covering Middle East, North Africa, on through to Asia. And in those contexts, there's often significant opposition to the gospel in those communities, ranging from what we might call soft prejudice. You can't get a job, you're not welcome in some social settings, through to outright violence with destruction of property, arrest, physical punishment, and frequently death. So by going to a church, even if it was a possibility, you may well be signing your death warrant. Next Sunday, Nev McCormick of Barnabas Aid, who's part of us here in Kings, will be explaining more about what it means to live as a Christian in the middle of such strong persecution. But things can and do change. Nepal, where we also have strong connections in Kings to Philip and Deborah, is a great example. When I was born in April 1952, there were no known Jesus followers in that country. Today, there's a growing, thriving, witnessing, multiplying church community in Nepal. Yes, there's still significant opposition and persecution. Yes, there's areas of the country where it's still virtually impossible for someone to hear about Jesus, but Nepal has reached that tipping point where it is increasingly possible for someone to hear the good news of the gospel. How did that come about? We'll look at that in a couple of minutes. So answering Paul's question, how can they believe in the one of whom they have not heard, continues to be a huge challenge when it's virtually impossible for 4 out of every 10 in the world to hear the message of the gospel. They can't hear the message, so they can't believe, and as a result can't call on the name of the Lord. So they remain stuck outside God's kingdom with their sins not forgiven and missing out in that relationship with God that they were created for. That's a serious problem. So Paul goes on to his next question, where he starts to provide some answers. And it's here how we begin to see how the situation in Nepal changed. His next question is, how can they hear without someone preaching to them? So it looks like the solution is to make sure there's enough people willing and able to go to bring the message to those who haven't heard it. This is similar to Jesus' comments to his disciples when he said, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field." Let's assume the disciples took Jesus seriously. So they got on their knees and they prayed for a year or two. Lord, send workers out, send workers out. Send people out to bring the message to those who need to hear it. But to those exact same disciples, a year or two later, he said, "All authority in heaven and earth had been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations." They were to be the answer to their own prayers. They were to get off their knees and onto their feet and go. I wonder how surprised they were when that dawned on them. See, so it is with us. We often pray for our missionaries around the world and for needy places and contexts globally. We've already done it here today. And we ask God to intervene, for his people to be active in showing and telling God's love to those who desperately need to experience it. But what if God is telling us to be the answer to our own prayers? To find out, like the original disciples, that he's asking us to move from our knees to our feet and get going. What would that look like? Well, back to Nepal. A doctor, Pat O'Hanlon. She's from England and she felt a real burden for Nepal. But the country was completely closed to any form of mission or outreach. So Pat and her colleague Hilda Steele, who was from Ireland, ran a dispensary on the Indian side of the border, waiting patiently for an opportunity to enter Nepal. They waited, worked, and prayed for 15 years. Then, in 1951, a change of regime in Nepal meant that Christians could enter the country for the first time. Some months later, Pat and Hilda, along with 4 medical colleagues and 5 India-based Nepali Christian men, literally got off their knees and onto their feet. They walked for 9 days till they got to Pokhara in the middle of Nepal, where they set up a medical clinic. This was the first, next, Amy. Thank you. This was the first structured witness in this previously closed country. Evangelism was outlawed, as was becoming a Christian. The only witness available to them was to show God's love by caring for people. Anyone who decided to follow Jesus faced severe punishment, both at official level and also socially and in their families. The Christian Nepalis who came with Pat and Hilda set up a church in Pokhara towards the end of 1952, the very first ever church in that country. Around 20 years later, there was an estimated 500 Christians in Nepal, mostly meeting in homes and often in secret. Today, there's still persecution of Christians in Nepal. Following Jesus still comes at a cost, both officially and socially. And remember, when I was born, there were no known Christians in the country. And while official figures are difficult to come by, estimates say there are close to 1 million Christians in Nepal today. That makeshift aluminium clinic in Pokhara is now the 100-bed Green Pastures Hospital and about to become the first Christian-based teaching hospital in Nepal, with Philip and Deborah heavily involved in this exciting project. See, Pat O'Hanlon chose to take on a burden for people she'd never heard, people who'd never heard about Jesus. She got on her knees and prayed for them. She did what she could to prepare for an opportunity to act on her prayers. When that opportunity came, she could off her knees, onto her feet, literally, and along with like-minded colleagues like Hilda, she walked. Philip and Deborah today stand on the shoulders not of giants, but of Pat and her colleagues, ordinary people like you and me, who dared to take God seriously when asked to pray and when asked to go. But that makes them giants in God's eyes. Who knows where our actions today could lead to a generation from now? Our willingness to share God's heart for those who don't know him, to get on our knees and pray for them, and to get on our feet and go, whether it's halfway across Bangor or halfway across the world. In a few minutes, as part of our reflection time, we will look at some options of how we could be part of that answer to the question, how will they hear? But it isn't just about people who go. Paul asks the final question here, where he recognizes that those who go need people to send them. How can anyone preach unless they are sent? We could have half the church willing to go, to give up their jobs and their personal ambitions like Pat O'Hanlon did, and move somewhere where there's a great need for people to experience God's love. But this question tells us that no one is going anywhere unless they're sent. God is the sender. Without his call, no one should go anywhere. But we already have the call to go and make disciples. So our starting point is the question, where do you want me to go? Not, do you want me to go? That's already a given. And to make his sending work, God sends through his people, you and me, to ensure that those who follow his call to go get well sent. So what does it mean to be a sender? Phyllis and I have been involved in mission in various contexts for over 50 years, and much of that time has been looking at exactly this question in all sorts of parts of the globe. How do those who send and those who go connect best? What makes a good sender? Here are three things we've identified as key elements in being a good sender. Ideally, they're offered together, like choosing a 3-course set dinner off the menu. On occasions, people may be in a position to only offer 1 or 2, like taking a course or 2 off the a la carte menu. But at least pick up the menu and choose something. The first thing is financial support. The gospel, like the NHS, is free at point of delivery. Those who follow God's call into mission aren't in a position to earn a living from their work. You don't sell God's love to those who need to experience it. And in mission, the waiting lists are incredibly long, much longer than the NHS. 4 out of 10 waiting to hear about Jesus for the first time. And staffing levels in mission are absurdly low. And the staff are seriously underpaid. Unlike the NHS, where underfunded staff can lead to strike action, missionaries don't usually go on strike. They just struggle on, under-resourced, unable to do all that God's calling them to do. So it's up to us, the senders, to make sure those who go are well-resourced to do what God's calling them to do. If you already support one of our missionaries or someone else in mission that you know on a regular monthly basis, that's great. Thank you. If you're not already connected with one of our missionaries financially, you'll get a chance in a couple of minutes to think about which of them you'd like to support. Signing up to support one of our members who has opted to go isn't just filling a gap in their budget. It's standing together with them to make sure that somebody somewhere in the world experiences God's love. Secondly, prayer. Life for any of us is a spiritual battle. We all know that. But when your primary daily focus is helping people hear about Jesus, the battle goes to a different level. Satan is committed to immobilizing people in mission and will do whatever he can to distract, discourage, and disappoint them. They need us to offer them spiritual protection, to intercede with God on their behalf. So sign up to get updates from one or more of our missionaries and take time to pray for them. Maybe choose a day of the week or a specific date in the month where they become a focus of your prayers. Without our prayers, we're sending them into a battlefield unequipped and defenseless in the face of a raging enemy. Every second Sunday morning, which is next Sunday this month, we have a global prayer time on Zoom for 9 to 9:45, where we get to pray both with and for our missionaries. Most months, it's the same dozen people who show up. Very faithful. But if we're to take our responsibilities as senders seriously, maybe this would be a good way for you to start. Set your clock for an hour earlier next Sunday and log on for 9 o'clock. You still will have plenty of time to get down to King's for the start of the service. The third bit on the set menu is encouragement. Living a life dedicated to mission can be lonely. For some, it can mean being away from family or friends for long periods of time, missing out on celebrations that we would consider normal. Birthdays, weddings, sometimes even funerals. And dealing with a different culture, language, food can be a relentless challenge. And of course, the whole concept of working with mission as your primary day job, whether it's here locally or in some far-flung place, is weird, not normal. It can be misunderstood, even ignored, and those involved can be forgotten, out of sight, out of mind. So pick one or two of our missionaries and start chatting with them in person or online. Find out about them, encourage them, just be a good, normal friend to them. We can assure you from our own experience that the consistent encouragement of few special people has been lifeline to us over the decades. If you need their contact details, Leslie can sort that out for you. So what response can we bring here to those in Kings? To these questions that Paul brought 2,000 years ago. How can we make a difference? Because as we've seen in Nepal, a difference can be made. You're getting a sheet handed out to you now with some options on it that can help. If you need a pen, there's pens available as well. Just ask some of the folk handing them out. So how can we respond to this? First of all, to send. Just want to go over these things to give. Choose one of the names on the sheet and commit to support them monthly. If you already do support one or more of our missionaries, could you increase their support? They don't get pay rises unless we give them a pay rise. If so, just put an I in the box for increase. You can also opt to support the General Mission Fund. So the Mission Committee will allocate your support as needed. If you can decide now, that's great. If you need time to think, pray, and talk about it more, that's fine too. Just bring the sheet home, but make sure you bring it back next week completed. Then Leslie will get back to you and explain how you can start or increase your support. Pray. Also tick the box of those you'd like to receive updates from and commit to praying for them in some regular pattern. Be careful not to overcommit. You're better to seriously engage with one or two than spread yourself too thin. And sign up to get the global news update. That comes out every month. It'll come out this coming week. They're the things that we will then pray for next Sunday. Tick that box. If you tick that box, you will get included in the invitation then to come to the Zoom call next Sunday. And join Global Prayer next Sunday, 9 o'clock. Try it once. I can encourage you, try it once. See how it goes. All you have to do is get up an hour earlier. Try it once, please. Encourage. Become an encouraging friend to one of our missionaries. You'll probably need to initiate the contact to get it going. And it might feel a bit strange at the start, sort of befriending someone you mightn't actually know that well. But again, start the process and see where it leads. Missionaries sometimes feel uncomfortable just having normal conversations with people because people aren't sure what to talk about. So just chat about normal things with them. They need people who they know are just committed to them as friends. Please do that. And then to go. How can we respond to go? We can go locally. God has arranged for many people from those unreached people groups. Remember we saw that unreached people groups, the whole box, the map is the big group in the middle. They've come here. They're on our streets, they're in our coffee shops. They desperately want to live in our country. And they've not always been made feel welcome. Some are confused, others even fearful. They all need God's love shown to them in one way or another. John Crone. John, wave your hand there. That's John at the back. John Crone and others here have a deep calling to reach out to these unreached people that God has brought to our doorstep. Talk to John and learn more about maybe how you can move your feet to help them. We don't have to trek 9 days to get to them. They're here already. And Stevie Garrett, Stevie, wave there. Stevie needs people to volunteer across the various ways he's reaching young people in the Ards Peninsula. These next generation kids may not be unreached because the gospel is available to them. But there's a lot of work to do for them to understand that the gospel is really liberating good news for them, not just a set of outdated rules that restricted their grandparents. You can help. Talk to Stevie. And then globally. First of all, a few ways that others from Kings have responded in the past. Use your gap year before or after university to serve one of our missionaries or another mission you're committed to. There's plenty of opportunities to do this. If you do that, it will completely change how you view life, how you view your future. Try it and see. But be careful, because it will change your life if you choose to do it. But take the gap year. For those a bit older, for whom a gap year is a distant memory, take a career break. Ask your employer if you can take 1 or 2 years away from your job to do exactly the same. Go somewhere else and see how can you help. What can you do? Or if you've taken or plan to take early retirement, how about using the years ahead to make a difference in God's kingdom somewhere? Russell and Roberta did this. It works. You have job and life skills that can be well used in mission. You may even discover new skills and gifts that God can put to use. And just generally, for all of us, explore short-term and long-term opportunities. Go to Worldwide. Go to the Global Village. Look around and find, is there an organization here that represents something God's stirring in my heart? A country, a cause, a people group. Talk to them. Find out what opportunities are there. Go to the evening sessions to listen to people talk about mind-blowing stuff. Remember, things can change. Like I said, Nepal changed from not one Christian the year I was born to 1 million today. Everyone in this room can be part of that somehow for the next generation. Ask God what parts of His burden for people He'd like you to share. Get on your knees and be ready to pray for them and get ready to get on your feet. And if you want to explore what it feels like to jump into mission-based life, leave the normal paid job, go into a mission-based life, talk to any of us who have made that decision already. We'd be more than happy to chat about how that's worked out for us. The passage in Romans we read at the start has another sentence immediately following. It's a quote from Isaiah 52, and it says, as it is written, how beautiful are the feet, next Amy, thank you, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. When Pat O'Hanlon got to Pokhara after that 9-day trek, I'm sure her feet must have been dirty, bruised, and blistered. They wouldn't have looked good, and they would have been in desperate need of a soothing foot bath and a pedicure. A lot different to the feet we looked at the beginning. But God saw those feet differently. To Him, those dirty, bruised, and blistered feet were beautiful because of what they had done. How does God look at our feet? We're going to take a few minutes now for you to think and pray how you can be part of the answer to Paul's questions. Tick the boxes that work best for you. Maybe start the process of checking out where your feet can go in this mad, crazy, exciting, eternal adventure. If you can complete the form in the next few minutes, please do so and bring the form with you to the communion table where there's baskets, like those little Chinese meal baskets there to drop them in. There'll also be a basket at the back at the Connect area if you want to leave one as you go. And if you need time to work on it, please, please do take the few minutes you need to do this during this week and bring it back next Sunday. If you're visiting with us today, feel free to engage with us in this. We still would love your prayers and your financial giving and your encouragement. Or think this through for the people that you know from your own church and your own communities. How can you be part of this story as well? In case you might know who everyone is on the form, on the screen, you see those who are on the list, who they are, where they work. This just to give you an idea, because you may not know who they all are. And in a minute or so, we will reflect on what our part can be, and then a song will be on the screen. You can keep reflecting for another few minutes, and then Sam will lead us into the Lord's Supper. So let's take some time to think about these people on the screen and think, can I be engaged in their lives somehow? And then we will have a song that we will be able to sing, be able to watch as it goes. But please do get involved and sign up. Come next Sunday on the Zoom call. Thank you.